Well, you sneezed on me. Hi everyone, it's Krissy and Toby. I know I had a couple people that were asking how I was able to get him here, so that is what we will be talking about today. This is Toby. He's a black lab, and we had to do his trip over to South Korea a little bit differently because since he is a bigger dog, I didn't want him to have to deal with being in quarantine for 2 weeks. So he actually came 2 weeks after I got here, so that by the time he came, I was already out of quarantine. So when he needed to go out, I would be able to do that and just take him out. But the process, I know for some dogs that people take them actually in cabin where they're riding in a little smaller carrier, probably at their feet. Toby is 85 pounds. There's no way that would work. So he had to go as cargo, and his crate is very big. When I found out that I was getting the job, and I'd made sure when I was in my interview, I had just said that I had a dog, and if he couldn't come with me, I wasn't going to be able to accept. So I just made sure beforehand that it was fine with the school that I would be teaching at, and they said it was no problem and I could bring a dog if I wanted to, and they had teachers that did that in the past. From there, that's when I started to look for a crate for him. I know, especially with the pandemic and everything, that it was harder to find because a lot of those factories had been repurposed to make PPE for people. So trying to find a large scale crate was a little bit harder. I just kept an eye out for it and got very lucky that there was a post at one point. Hello. There was a post at one point that said they're about to have them back in stock for a little bit. So I went on, was able to order one, got it through Amazon, and it was nice that I had it for a while in the house so he was able to get used to it, and I collapsed his other crate. Toby really likes his crate, so it was just nice for him to get a feel for it. From there, I knew I didn't want to have to do it alone and guess on all of the paperwork because I didn't want to get him all the way here and find out I had missed something. I chose to go with, I talked around to different people that had brought their dogs or cats places. I got very lucky that one of our teachers that already came to Seoul had brought their dog, and I was able to bounce some ideas off of her and found a company in the US called Pet Relocator. I highly recommend them. Deanna was amazing with helping to keep me in the loop about everything. He had to get a couple of vet checks just to make sure that he was up on his rabies, his heart guard. He did have to get an extra test that's called like I call it a FAVN, or the FAVN test. He had to get that done, and that had to be done within, I want to say, 6 months of travel. When they had to do a little bit of blood work for that and had to send it to a USDA facility where they could check it and do the official check on it to make sure that he was fine. So that came back in the mail. From there, it was figuring out the date that he would be flying out and letting Deanna know that, and getting my packet of information ready, which just said where he was coming from, where he was going to, what my address and phone number were going to be in Korea. That part I had to wait on, which they were okay with because I didn't know them at the time. Once I knew my address, I was able to let Deanna know. And in Korea, the company picking him up is called Shin Dogs Air. They also have a boarding company, and the main person, it's a couple, but the main person that I was in contact with was Leo. He was really amazing. I found them through Facebook and was just able to see throughout the months of how he really bends over backwards to care for the animals when they get to him, even if they're animals that aren't in the care of Shin Dogs. I felt a lot more secure about that because you could really tell he cared. From there, it was just getting all of that information done. I had 1 or 2 extra, I think it was 2. I had one where I had to bring him in and they had to double check for rabies again and do a health check. That's also when I got some extra heart guard and neck guard for him. They took his weight. I had to do that one because every year it's his regular checkup. So that's when we did, but that's when we would have done even if we weren't leaving. Throughout the process, Deanna and Leo were contacting me via email of, have you done this yet? This is when you need to do it. It was nice to have someone that this is their whole job, being able to tell me what we needed to make sure that we got done. From there, he was going to have one last test that has to happen within, he's itching, within 10 days of his flight. So I was already in South Korea at that point. I was sitting in quarantine. Since I was already in quarantine, I was very fortunate. Both of my parents loaded him up and took him to my vet for that last check. With that checkup, the certification, your vet has to check them and pretty much say that they're cleared to fly, that they don't have any conditions that are going to be an issue. That has to be sent again to the USDA to get kind of that stamp of approval. So when she had sent the last packet of information, Deanna from Pet Relocator, that is when she had sent a pre-filled out envelope of when you get the test results, they go in here, this gets overnighted to the USDA. They should get it done within 2 days. I think ours took maybe a day and a half, and then overnight it. Sometimes they would overnight it back to you. I had a different situation, which I'll explain later. And then you have the documents that you need and you're good to go. Because of the pandemic, our situation was a little bit different since he wasn't flying with me and he couldn't fly out of the closest airline to me. Actually, the closest airline he could fly out of was Denver, and we're in Iowa, so that was an issue. When it looked like he would be able to fly with me and we weren't going to have to deal with the 2-week quarantine, we were just going to drive out there and I was going to get my flight out from there as well. Since that wasn't going to be the case, I paid an extra fee so that Pet Relocator can actually do a home pickup. They came and picked him up from my parents' house on the day that they needed to and took him out. He spent the night with Deanna. She sent progress update photos to myself and my family back at home, so we knew that he was doing okay. She sent pictures when he was about to board his flight. He had 2 stops. He went from Denver to Frankfurt in Germany, and then he had a layover there where they take them to a separate little dog kennel area so they can get out of their crates. Then he got back into his crate and went from Frankfurt to Incheon Airport. At Incheon Airport, he had to go through customs. Because he is up to date on all of his paperwork, he had that FAVN test done. He didn't have to do any type of quarantine. I know in some countries they have to do that, but coming into South Korea, if you have all of that paperwork done ahead of time, you don't have to worry about your dogs having to be quarantined in a facility or anything. So he was able to be dropped off. I paid an extra fee so that Leo could just bring him straight to my apartment. Once he got here, it was a little bit interesting. He was delivered. Leo said he had been fine. He also was very informative when he was able to get Toby after customs of, I have him, this is what he looks like, he's gone to the bathroom, I gave him some extra water. I definitely felt like I was in the loop and that he was cared for extremely well. By the time he got to me, it was in the evening. His flight had gotten in around lunchtime, but customs takes a little bit of time right now to clear through. And the traffic took a little bit of time for Leo to get here. But he got dropped off. It was great. He was excited. I was super excited. Leo was really helpful. Once I got him inside, he was able to explore the apartment. The only issue is he's got such a big crate. Yes, I see you. He's got such a big crate, it would not fit through the gate at the bottom of our apartment. So I had to take it back out to the main street. Once I took it out to Main Street, I found that I could go down a different alleyway on the other side of our apartment. There's a gate there, but it was low enough that I could like lift his crate over it, shimmy around, and then grab it, and brought it up the stairs to my apartment because he does have a massive crate. It would not fit through the door. The bolts that I had on his crate are what I'd call like a 12-point or a star point bolt on his crate. So the pliers that, or the screwdriver attachment that I had to work with regular bolts wasn't going to work. I got very lucky. My principal was willing to come out with a set of pliers and a hammer, and out in front of my apartment we had to turn the light on and physically use a pliers to get them because they were so tight, and then hammer out the bolts so that I could take it apart into the two halves and take the door off. Got that inside, and it was pretty much, that was the end of the process. The last little thing we have to do is once I get my alien registration card that my visa has cleared, I need to take him to the vet, and you need to get them registered. Along the lines with that, you have to make sure when you're coming in, one of the things your vet will have to check is what type of microchip you have in your dog or your cat, because it has to be an international number. I got very lucky that when my vet put his microchip in the first place, she put an international microchip that works everywhere. Otherwise, some people have had to get like a separate microchip implanted into them, so I know that's something that people do have to check. I just got very lucky that my vet always does that, so it's an international microchip that works anywhere. But once we get to the vet here and we do a check, we have to get his microchip registered with the Korean government and make sure that he just registered here. So that's one extra thing that we have to do, but it will also be nice to take him to the vet so that he can just have a general checkup after the point. Random things I think some people might be wondering about if they're going to take their pet somewhere. I would check beforehand if you can find a pet relocation company. I know it's more expensive, but I felt way more at ease, and I was still kind of stressed about it. I think my stress level would have been way up higher had I not found Pet Relocator and Shindogs Air. I would also look at, because you'll need a relocation company in your home country and the country you're going to, see which ones work well together. That I actually found Shindogs first on Facebook, and they said they worked well with Pet Relocator. It was nice to know that they already had a working relationship and they knew kind of the process with each other, which was really helpful. I also was checking for ways to buy his type of dog food and see if it was available here, or seeing if there was a different substitute I was going to need. I got very lucky that pretty much everything is available in South Korea, and I was able to find his dog food here before he even got here. So when he got here, it's the same dog food, so that's not one extra thing that he's having to deal with. They will most likely be very dehydrated when they get to you. That's just because on the flight, and you'll see it in many articles, they really don't drink a lot of water. I noticed that the first couple of days he was fairly dehydrated, even though I was giving him a lot of water. Part of that though is also because we were experiencing a heat wave and it's really hot outside, so anytime I take him outside to go to the bathroom, it's really hot. And that's just a part of travel, I think, for dogs and cats, is they might not drink a lot of water because they're unsure when they're in the plane. Disposition wise, exact same. He was just really excited the first day, really curious our first walk, and he's just settling in just fine. So it's definitely a hillier walk for him. So we have one big hill that we always do right at the beginning of our walk that gets us up onto a ridge of the mountain, and we just kind of stay on that ridge and maybe go down, maybe have one big hill at the end of our walk. But I'm trying to do that before we do any crazy trails that go up and down, up and down. One, because I just want to make sure he's okay after that trip. It's been not even a week, I think, that he's been here. So I just want to take it kind of slow. But we've been doing a fair amount of walks early in the morning or late at night so that he can get a feel for where he's at, starts to understand that this is our home now, and just getting a sense of where he's at. And that activity, I think, will help tire him out when I'm gone at school, because we've already started our in-services, so it helps to tucker him out while I'm away at work. He is spoiled while I'm away at work. I do leave like the iPad on with some shows so he just gets some noise. I usually leave the curtains open so he can look out. That's just because I spoil him. When it comes in terms of price, that will vary depending upon how long your flight is and how many stops they have, kind of where they're going from point A to point B. Also dependent upon what time of the year it is, how big your dog is, probably. That would just be things to check out with the company. If you're choosing to fly them cargo yourself, that would be something to check in with the airlines. I liked going with the pet relocation company because they knew which airlines were going to be fine with it. I've watched in several Facebook forums of people being like, this airline said I was fine and my pet was booked, and a week before they said no. So I didn't want to deal with that. I was glad I didn't have to deal with that. I think that's been an in-cabin issue more than anything. I know I watch the YouTube channel, The Suitcase Designer, and they had that issue with, April had that issue with her cat, where right before they were like, oh, we don't have a ticket for your cat. And she had to call the airlines, and it was kind of stressful. And then they said, oh no, we have a spot for your cat. So it's just a little bit of a headache. If it's a smaller animal though, I would say try in cabin, because you get to have them physically with you the entire time. So that would be something to check out. I would just keep in mind that some airlines might give you that runaround, and you might have to make sure you have your pet's ticket pulled up, as well as kind of their rules on their website. So if you get someone that's kind of being grumpy and is like, no, we can't do that, you can pull out all of your documents and be like, no. I would say it's better to over-plan and over-organize. So if you get any hiccups along the way, it's easier to smooth them out. I also found it very helpful when we were preparing him and he was getting used to his crate. I had a blanket, just like a thin blanket. I didn't mind what happened to it. I think it's like it's that when you see like all of these little kids have that have all the stars on it, it's really thin. We just used that. I slept with it for a couple of nights, so it smelled like me. Put that in the crate so it was something familiar. I also think it helped that he was used to that crate by then. He'd had it in our house for a couple of months and he understood that that was his. And then when he got here, I had made sure I'd packed space for some of his toys. So right when he got here, he had some familiar things that were here since I'd already been here, stuck inside for 2 weeks. It smells like me, I guess, so he can understand that it's our place. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The main things is, if you're going to go with a pet relocation company, double checking their microchip and understanding that you're probably going to have to get a FAVN or FAVN, there's some name because that's just the acronym. Getting that test, there might be an extra blood test or rabies test that you have to do, and then checking with what you need on the tail end when they get here to help make that transition as easy as possible, and looking into the crate. If you have any other questions about it, because I guarantee there are things I'm forgetting about the process, if you just leave them, I'll make sure to answer them, because I understand when you're traveling with your pet, that's like, your pet is super close to your heart. For me, I always say, like, he's like my baby. So you want to make sure everything's going well, because you can't imagine something bad happening to them along the way. But I would definitely say, if you're coming here, Shin Dog's Air and Pet Relocator, I know some people will be like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. I'm just so glad he got here okay. And I was informed throughout the entire process, and they made sure all of my T's were crossed and my I's were dotted with all of the paperwork before I even left. That was huge to me. So I would do it again in a heartbeat. If I knew we were going somewhere, I would still be using those two companies, because it just made it a lot easier. Since then, we've just been kind of hanging out. We take our hikes in the morning and at night, explore the sites. Went to Myeongdong yesterday and did some shopping while he was taking a little nap after we had gone out and taken a walk, which was really fun. So I'm sure you'll probably see those clips in here. But that's pretty much it.